Hey everyone, and welcome back. So today we're going to be taking a look at one of the best accessories for your Switch or Switch OLED, the NYXI joypad. Now, since the release of the Switch OLED, a lot of old accessories are no longer functional. For example, if you have a grip that was styled for the old Switch, unfortunately, generally, the new Switch OLED won't fit with your different Joy-Cons. Also, if you have options like this out there, unfortunately, once again, the tablet having changed size are no longer compatible. But luckily, just before the release of the OLED, I received the NYXI joypads, which I am super happy to say are compatible with either the Switch or the Switch OLED. And I had already started testing them to get a review ready, which means that when I got my OLED and I saw that they were automatically compatible, I was super happy because I do think that now this is probably one of the best options out there for anyone wanting a Joy-Con alternative that is more comfortable and more functional than the actual Nintendo Joy-Cons. Why? Because ultimately, these are the first time that I have Joy-Con alternatives that I can say have almost no downsides to the original Nintendo ones, and even have only upsides. Now, we are going to be taking a close-up look in a few seconds, but just for some spoilers, basically, these are almost identical to a Hori SplitPad Pro comfort-wise and size-wise. You even have a programmable button at the back, but surprise, surprise, what we do have here that the Hori SplitPad does not have is that this still has rumble functionality and they also work wirelessly. And if you are the owner of a Switch, and more specifically, I would say a Switch OLED, that is a huge option. Because with the better kickstand now on your Switch, when you are set up on the go and you have the option to go tabletop, personally, I have started going tabletop much more often. Because the only thing that used to prevent me on my old Switch was the fact that that kickstand was not very trustworthy, and I didn't want to have to always carry around a separate stand or a separate accessory to be able to hold up my Switch. But now, with the arrival of the NYXI joypads, I have what I think is the best option from going to handheld mode to tabletop mode and really losing out no functionality. In reality, the only caveat that I found so far is that the NYXI joypad do not read amiibos. However, when you're on the go, are you really bringing your amiibos with you? Not very often, at least not in my case. So to me, it is not that much of a downside. But now let's take a close-up look at the joypad so that you guys can get a better view of all the options available, the functionalities, and basically what this joypad has to offer. So first of all, I just want to show you guys what they look like when they're connected to the Nintendo Switch, because in a few seconds I'm going to detach them. It'll just be easier for looking at the various functions, but ultimately they fit almost perfectly with the size of the Nintendo Switch. And if we look at the back side, once again, everything fits in really nicely. So first of all, form factor wise, I just want to show you how similar they are to a Hori SplitPad Pro. They are almost identical in form factor. The Hori SplitPad is maybe a tiny bit larger at the top, but overall, once they're connected to the Switch, they are very similar. They even have the same programmable button, as I said earlier, at the back. Also, they are texturized, which is honestly very appreciated. The Hori SplitPad is as well, but only on the little part here. This one is fully texturized all the way at the back. Now, other than offering a programmable button at the back, there is even a turbo functionality on this. So when I said that you're really losing none of the options that you get from a Hori SplitPad Pro, that is very true. You even get the turbo functionality on the controller. And just in case you're wondering, it is even the same for the other controller. The turbo button is there as well. So you really have turbo functionality for all of the different face buttons. Now, you also probably noticed that there's an LED function here. And just so you know, it is also programmable in different ways. You can either switch the color, so going from red to orange to different colors, all the way back to the rainbow color that I have by default. And by the way, both sides of the Joy-Con are programmable separately. If you want one color on the left, you can have a different color on the right. But there is also, you can have the option to have it a breathing function. So now the light will come on in a breathing function. You can even have a basic rainbow function, meaning that it'll be rainbow, but it'll be breathing in the rainbow function as well. And lastly, if none of these lights interest you, you can completely turn them off as well. So if you're not the kind of person that likes LEDs on their controllers, if you play in the dark and it bothers someone because it's lit up, you can actually turn off the lights completely. Now, looking at all these functions and knowing that they work wirelessly, you're probably asking yourself one last question. If we're playing in tabletop mode and I don't want to have two separate joypads, is there an option for that? So the way we solve this is with the controllers comes this little attachment, just very similar to the option for the Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons. You just slot your controllers in there and you can now play as if this was one standard Pro controller. And form factor wise, this is actually very comfortable. Almost comparable, as I said earlier, to a Pro controller. Not quite there, but very similar. And just to round things off, you do have full vibration function with this controller. And secondly, motion control also works. And if you look at the bottom of the controllers, yes, you do have some USB-C ports, but you don't actually need them. If you plug this onto your standard Nintendo Switch, it will charge perfectly with the main unit. So there's no need to charge these controllers separately. And maybe in this form factor, you want to see the back as a last option. You have here the programmable buttons. Everything is actually really, really comfortable as a form factor. So I think we saw pretty much everything we needed to see from the close-up. Overall, this is offering really, I think, the best of both worlds as a Joy-Con alternative. So now that we saw all the functionalities, I think you're starting to see why I say this is one of the best options for your Nintendo Switch or your Switch OLED. Because basically, it's taking all the added functionalities from a Hori Split Pad Pro and giving you all the advantages of a standard Nintendo Switch Joy-Con. As I said earlier, with only one small caveat, the lack of NFC compatibility. For example, me personally, I always loved the feel and basically functionality of the Hori Split Pad Pro, but I was always super disappointed that if I left the house with this, I would lose the wireless compatibility. Which is why I was super happy to see that when they sent me these Joy-Cons, the build quality and the sizing of the Joy-Con is almost identical to the Hori Split Pad Pro, even with that added button at the back like we just saw earlier. Not only that, but this actual controller format is very comfortable. If you compare this to taking a standard Nintendo Switch Joy-Con and putting it in the dog-faced controller format, this is way more comfortable. Of course, it's maybe not quite as comfortable as an actual Switch Pro controller, but it comes pretty darn close. And I'll be honest with you, when I was first contacted by the company to test out these Joy-Cons, I really thought I was going to get a cheap subpar product. However, I am super happy to say, yet again, I was surprised and I got a really quality product out of it. Not only that, but I was so surprised by this controller and so happy with what I got that I actually asked them for a link for all of you, which will give you an extra $5 off. So if you go down in the description of the video, there will be an affiliate link to the NYXI site and a code for you to use that will actually give you an extra $5 off if you decide to order yourself a pair of these Joy-Pads. And honestly, until something better comes along, this is what I'm going to be putting in the description of my videos as my suggested Joy-Con alternative. And if you have any other questions or anything you would like to know about this Joypad, you can always ask me in the comments down below. Now, just don't forget on the way out that if you do like this type of video, to please hit that like button, consider subscribing to the channel if you aren't already, and hitting that notification bell so you know when all my future content comes out. And as usual, I hope I'll see all of you in my next video.